In this video, we take a look at how to knit in the round using a circular needle. Stay with me and I'll show you how. Circular needles are either used for knitting in the round or for knitting rows of large projects where the width is too wide for a standard straight needle. But in this video, we're going to concentrate on knitting in the round. Circular needles come in various sizes and lengths, and they're a double-pointed needle with a long cable in between. As well as a variation in needle sizes, the length of the cable also varies. I also have a set of convertible circular needles, where I have the needles of varying sizes, which can be attached to cables of varying sizes. Here we have a long and short cable. I also have a medium cable, which is currently in use. When deciding what size of needle to use, we pick the needle size appropriate to our yarn, and for the length we need to figure out the circumference of our project. So for this example, I'm going to be knitting a loop with a circumference of 20 centimetres, so I'm using a 20 centimetre needle, and this is measured from tip to tip. You can also use a length of needle that's slightly shorter, but it doesn't matter if the stitches bunch up a little bit on the cable. But if the needle is longer, that can stretch and distort your stitches and you won't get a good end result. So figure out the circumference of your project and use a needle of the same length or slightly smaller. So let's get started. First we cast on. I'm using the long tail cast on. We place our slip knot on the needle and we cast on, letting the loop slip onto the cable as we go. Now my stitches are all cast on. They fit neatly on the needle without being stretched apart. Now to begin knitting in the round, we want to join the two ends together. One end of the needle will have the working thread coming off. We take this needle in our dominant hand. We make sure that our stitches aren't twisted. We insert our needle into the end stitch, and we simply knit as normal. You might want to pull the first stitch snug to make sure there's not a gap in between the first and last stitch. And we carry on along the round, knitting stitches from the left needle onto the right. And we keep knitting all around until we reach our tail. The tail marking the end of the round. As we work along our rounds, keeping track of the tail might become more difficult. So I like to use a stitch marker, which I slip on my needles between the first and last stitches. Now we finished our first row and we're about to start our second, and this is where knitting in the round differs from knitting in rows. When working in rows, we're always flipping our work, knitting our odd rows from the front side and our even rows from the back side. But working in the round, we're always working from the front side. So we need to bear that in mind whatever pattern we're working with. So for example, if I want to work in garter stitch, whenever we're flipping our work in rows, we're always working in knit stitches. But in the round that's different. We knit our odd rounds in knit stitches, but when we come to a new round we bring our yarn to the front and knit our even round in purl stitches. Purling on the front of the work gives the same effect as knitting on the back. And when we reach the end of the row, we slip our stitch marker, move our yarn to the back, and knit across the round. And just keep going, alternating your rows between knit stitches and purl stitches. As another example, if we wanted to work in stocking stitch, knitting in rows, we would knit on the front side and purl on the back side. Remember, when knitting in the round, we're always working on the front side. And just as purling on the front gives the same effect as knitting on the back, knitting on the front gives the same effect as purling on the back. So we don't have to keep track of whether we're knitting an odd or even row. We just knit until we reach our desired length. And as our piece grows bigger, you will notice that at the beginning of our work where we cast on, there is a jog between the first and last stitches. This is because when working in the round, we're actually knitting in one long helix. So rather than an even step up at the start of each round, there's a bit of a jog. But we can fix that when we come to weaving in our tail. We put our tail on a yarn needle and we sew under this V that's just behind our slip knot, coming under both legs of the V, coming in the opposite side to where our tail is coming out. We pull it snug but not too tight, and then we come back down into the hole where our tail was coming out. Now we've pulled those two ends together and we've evened out our jog. And now we can continue to weave in our ends how we normally would. And that's how to knit in the round using a circular needle.